Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to all of our attendees tuning in from around the world to a new season of Invisible Women in Sport. Today's broadcast of Invisible Women in Sport is a part of our WISE series. WISE stands for Women of Influence in Sport and Education. This broadcast is an Institute for Sport and Social Justice production, and I'm your producer, Garnett Overby III. All guests will be muted during this production, but I encourage you to use the chat feature to ask a question or leave a comment. We will reserve time at the end to answer your questions. So now, without further ado, I would like to welcome our host, Candice Martin.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's episode. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 1 of Invisible Women in Sport, and I'm your new host, Candice Martin. Today, you're all in store for a treat as we are Kayla Henderson is joining me today, Assistant Director for Student Athlete Development at Clemson University. And she's also a very, very proud DeVos alum. So I'm very excited that she's featured here as my first official guest on Invisible Women in Sport. And as Garnett stated, she is a guest of our WISE series, and WISE is Women of Influence in Sport and Education. Our WISE featured guests are in their first 5 to 10 years of their career. So thank you, Kayla, for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited for this. Thank y'all.
Very, very awesome. Very awesome. So remember in our pre-screen, I told you that we play a game, whether it be rapid fire or two truths and a lie.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
So I know Kayla's a former athlete like myself, so we're going with rapid fire.
Okay.
See how quick you can think on your toes. So you get 30 seconds. I have a series of questions, and so you just spit out what your choice is, and then we'll see how much time you have to spare at the end.
Okay, let's see.
All right, you ready? All right.
Yes.
So, okay, favorite pastime?
Cooking.
Netflix and chill or night out with friends?
Night out with friends.
What would you buy first if you had $1 million?
A house.
Very nice. Night out, early bird?
Early bird.
Fast food or home cooked meal?
Home cooked meal, always.
Heels or sneakers?
Ooh, sneakers.
Favorite athlete of all time?
Kobe.
Very nice. 1 second to spare. Very nice.
Ooh, I have nothing to sweat.
I didn't even see you sweat. Very nicely done. All right, everyone. So we're going to jump right into the conversation today with Ms. Kayla. So pretty much just kind of tell us first, what was your start in sport? How did you get started in the industry?
Yeah, so I would say my start in sports in general started when I was super young, my introduction into the sports world in general. So just growing up, my dad is an avid sports lover. We went to football games, basketball games, all types of stuff. He was a college athlete at Georgia Tech. He played football. So I grew up around his old teammates who I consider my uncles to this day. And so without even knowing it, I was kind of being groomed to be in this space because I just saw the importance of those relationships and his experiences in college. And that jumpstarted my volleyball career in sports. But I think just being in college, I went to University of Wyoming for undergrad. I was a volleyball player, just like you, Candice. So I just gained this love for sports that had always been there for me as a child, but really blew up for me in college. And I didn't really know it at the time, but I was also being groomed to work in sports at that moment. I did internships. I was really involved in SAC and just different aspects of the student athlete experience. And so once I graduated from grad school from UCF, from DeVos, like you said, a proud DeVos alum, I started working at the University of Washington, and there I worked in our student athlete academic services department. And so I kind of was in between academics and student athlete development. And I would say that was my birth, obviously my first job after grad school into the sports industry. And it was everything that I thought it would be. It was just my first job in. I was just on the ground working hard, doing anything anyone asked me to do. So that was really exciting for me. And then obviously to be here now at Clemson, it's just super exciting. But I say all of that just to say that I've been involved in this sports world since I was born, essentially. And it's really crazy for me to see all that has come to be in my position now at Clemson.
Absolutely. So for the listeners, tell us, what position did you play in volleyball?
So I was an outside hitter and a right side hitter. Right side hitter, that was my favorite position because it's a lot easier if you know anything about volleyball than being outside. So yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Get all the junk balls, all the junk balls.
Exactly.
We won't get too technical. We might lose the viewers.
We know what's going on.
So I want to backtrack a little bit. In our pre-screening, you talked about how, so Kayla finished with a accounting degree from the University of Wyoming. So pretty much tell us how you went about finding something to fuel your soul. You spoke about that a lot in our pre-screening. So for our listeners, kind of how to maneuver that space, because oftentimes you have young professionals who are leaving undergrad and in the space of, I don't know what's next. You know, I got this degree, but I'm not necessarily sold on it. That's not really what I want to do, but my family and friends and maybe potentially current mentors are pushing for me to go into this route, but that's not what I love to do. So how did you go about finding something that you actually love to do and something that will also feed into you personally as well as professionally?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think for me, it was finding out that sometimes things that you're good at or things that you have a little bit of interest in doesn't necessarily feed your soul like other things in your life that you're also interested in. So for me, accounting, I was good at it somewhat. I got good grades in my classes and I like math. I like the idea of business and all the things that go into the business and accounting side. I'm also an organizational, like obsessed with organization. I just love everything about it. And accounting has a lot to do with that. But I also knew that it wasn't what I valued the most out of life. Like things that I valued ever since I was a little girl was giving back, was service, was helping people, was sports, obviously. And when I graduated from Wyoming, I had an internship in Atlanta. And I thought that that's the life I wanted to live, driving to Atlanta every day, not realizing how bad traffic is and having my coffee, wearing heels, all of that. I thought that's what I wanted, but it wasn't. I went to work every day. Like, this is what I thought I was supposed to do, but this isn't really me. And I would do my work, obviously. And then I would just sit there and like, this isn't what I want. Like, what do I want to do? And it really forced me to think about, what is it that you love? What are things that drive you? What is your passion? And it is diversity and inclusion, it's sports, it's still business in a sense, but not overwhelmingly. And that's how I found the DeVos program. So I would just say to anyone who's also going through the same things in their life of what is it? I think for me, it's just sitting down and really being in tune with yourself. And I do that best by journaling. And I tell that to everyone. I just love to journal and get all my thoughts out on paper. That was a big point in my life. Like, I'm in this internship, I'm doing what I thought I wanted to do, which feels kind of good, but I'm also doing what people told me, yeah, just go into accounting. Like, you like business, accounting is a great career. And while it is, it wasn't great for me. So I took about a year and a half to really think through that. What is it that I want? And it's possible to go after it. And I shouldn't be afraid to step out of my comfort zone. And that was really big for me. And that's how I found DeVos. And that really changed the direction of where I was going and even my happiness in my life.
Absolutely. I wish we had connected last semester when we were in our accounting class, because I think across the board, we could have used
Ooh, yeah. It's funny when you tell people what your degree, your undergrad was, everyone asks, and then people start coming to me. I'm like, I'm not sure I'm the best person still to give y'all.
But I think it would have been better versus some of us who had like no math background to very little. Like, I think I took trig in high school.
It's hard. And it's still, even though I didn't obviously pursue accounting fully, it's still something that I look back on. I'm like, wow, I'm so grateful that that's what I got my degree in, because it's helped me out a lot more in my personal life than I realized. But even professionally, I love Excel, which is the most nerdy thing ever, I know, but that helps a lot because a lot of people don't like Excel. So they naturally come to me about it.
I have an appreciation for it. I have another friend, she works in finance and she's like crunching her budget in Excel. I'm just jealous, like, show me the way.
I got you. If you ever need help, reach out.
I will do. You're probably going to regret that, but I will do. I'm going to have all my girls on the main line. So just be ready.
It's a team.
Right. Absolutely. It's a family. So you talked a little bit about DeVos. Right now, we're in the recruitment space. trying to get more students into the program, trying to attract more diverse students to the program. So what would you tell people as to why you chose DeVos and how you believe that DeVos has helped you get to your current role now, how it helped you at the University of Washington and how it helped you get to your role at Clemson?
Yeah, so this kind of piggybacks off of the last question that we talked through, but I was thinking through my passions, like, what am I passionate about? What do I want to do? And I literally would just sit on Google and type in jobs and sports. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know about all the different websites that you could go through now. And I started thinking about what are opportunities in service, what are opportunities in business still that mixes all of this. Should I go to grad school? I don't know what I should do. So somehow, somewhere or another, DeVos pops up in my Google search, and I'm reading through it in this program that matches business, your MBA, with service, with diversity and inclusion, and really just a platform of sport for change. And I started looking up Dr. Lapchick. I was like, I don't know who this man is. And I looked up all his information. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how, me being the person I am, how did I miss all of this? And I instantly felt connected, and I applied. And I remember getting in and just like screaming in my kitchen back home. No one else was home, thankfully, so they didn't have to deal with that. But even coming down to DeVos for my interview, it just felt so right automatically. And I just knew. And after spending a year and a half thinking through what is it that I want to do, it instantly just felt right. And so I think those aspects of DeVos really intrigued me, like I said, for the business side, but then also really just the platform of sport for change, because service to others is really, really, really important for me. And then just seeing the background of people who went through DeVos, companies and people that DeVos is connected to, it just all really, really resonated with me. And then while there, it of course lives up to all the hype that it has. So I definitely got the business, the accounting classes, the finance, marketing, all of that. You get some of that. You definitely get some of that in your experience. But then I was fundraising chair. So I remember coming in, and Crystal Peterson, she was in the class above me. She was fundraising chair, and she was like, if you want to be fundraising chair, if you want to be a part of team SBM is what we call it, don't do it if you're not okay with not being liked. And I was like, that's a huge issue for me. I feel like I always have to be liked by people, so I'm going to do it, and really push myself to do it, which was scary. And I did it, and I definitely wasn't liked at points and times, but I feel like it was for the better of the group. We fundraised enough money to go on our class trip that every class in DeVos takes every year to different locations. So that was a growth experience for me too. And I think DeVos just taught me how to get out and grow, and gave opportunities to network, gave opportunities to just get out into the community and do different things, because that service part is a huge part of the program. And then just all the people and the professionals that were brought in really poured into us. And I didn't know going in what exactly I wanted to do. And I didn't know I wanted to work in student athlete development, but I realized moving forward, okay, this is actually what I wanted to do. And then having people at DeVos who were supportive of what I wanted to do. I know Doc Harrison, one of the professors in our group, one of the leaders in this space, he was like, oh, you want to do this? Then you can work on this paper with me. So I helped write a paper and all these things, and going to conferences. DeVos really just opened up my network and my eyes to all the possibilities, especially when I knew what I wanted to do, which was really impactful for me. And I think 100% that led to me getting my first job at Washington, because I was able to network and connect with people that I didn't know before, who I probably wouldn't have found out without DeVos. And it just gave me that confidence from all the experience with fundraising and then working for ISSJ, which I was a GA for. All of that just really helped me be confident in what I wanted, give me the tools, and then give me the networking experience to go out and get it.
Absolutely. In the spirit of support, I would like to let everyone know that Dr. Lapchick is on today, right now, supporting the podcast of Invisible Women in Sport. So I'd like to say thank you, Dr. Lapchick, for finding time out of your day to spend some time to support us and giving women a platform to advocate and to continue to uplift more women in the industry. All right, Miss Kayla. So now you're in student athlete development at the University of Clemson, So for someone interested in going into this space and this role, what is some things that they should know? The good, the bad, the ugly, we're just to keep it honest here, just what will you tell those
Yeah.
individuals?
Yeah, so with any job, I think networking is important. And for this space, having a good brand and networking is super, super important. And I think my mom is on here, so I'm gonna give a shout out to my mom. She used to tell me in undergrad, Kayla, you need to network. And I'm like, okay, like, let me fake call this person. Like, yeah, mom, I called. Hopefully she doesn't get mad at me about this. But let me tell her I networked, quote unquote. And I didn't really understand it until DeVos. That's one of the biggest things I learned from DeVos is how to network and who to network with and what you should do, what you shouldn't do, all of that. But I think for this space especially, it is such a big space, yet it's a really, really small community. So once you know someone, people are usually very, very helpful in introducing you to someone else. And once you have a good brand and something for people to say about you when they connect you with someone else or talk about you in rooms that you're not in, it spreads like wildfire. So I think like any business that you go into, networking is really important. But I think just being ready to show what you can do and doing the actual work. And I'm gonna shout out another DeVos alum, Sable Lee, who I'm sure I'll mention again in this episode, but we were talking about this and she was like, I think people just need to show up and be able to do the work. And I'm like, yes, like exactly, that's it. There are a lot of long hours. Me and my coworkers are constantly talking about how can we not stress ourselves out. I think a lot of people in this field are servant leaders, and we want to serve the student athletes and give them programs and be there for them with open arms and open doors, all of that. And sometimes that can wear you thin if you're not taking care of yourself. And I know that's a huge topic in our space in general, but definitely in our office of sometimes you'll work programs that go into 8:30 at night or 9 o'clock at night for 4 days out of a week for 3 weeks straight. And it's ridiculous and it feels good because you're being a servant leader. However, how sustainable that is, I'm not too sure. So if there's a good, bad, and ugly, that might be a little bit of the ugly side.
Okay.
But someone who's willing to show up and do the work ultimately is what I'm getting at, right? Like someone who can say they want to do a program and show up and do it. And so some advice I would give to someone who's interested is create programs that you want to do that you think are good for student athletes. And that's literally what you would do in this space. Like for us, we have a core values program, I guess. And even now I'm thinking of, okay, this program is until next year, but how can we add in branding into that? Or how else can we talk about core values? So just always being on your toes and being innovative in how you reach students, how you talk to students, how you get them to understand what you're trying to teach them so you're not teaching at them, but ultimately how you build the programs, how you do the work, that you're detail oriented, that you know how to communicate. All those things are super important in those space. So finding ways to build those out is really important as well.
Absolutely. Maya, did you get all that? Maya's interested in going to student athlete development. So
yes, Maya, we need to talk. I got you.
She's already written it down. Don't worry. Absolutely. So you talked about network. So like the VOS program puts a lot of people in front of us and puts us in front of just as many people, well-renowned people who we can all benefit from. So how do you decipher between, individuals who you're going to connect with, stay in contact with? How often do you decide to reach out? How do you kind of keep track of that? Because as we're progressing throughout the program, our networks are growing so much and it's kind of hard to, how do I reach out? How often do I reach out to where it's not, becomes a nuisance, but to where it still gives the perception that, I'm interested in the growth of our professional relationship. I'm interested in how you can assist me, but also how I can assist you as well. So how do you identify those people and how do you manage your network and stay connected with your network effectively?
Yeah, I think sometimes when people think about networking, it's like, how many people can I reach out to? How many people can I talk to? And it's about, if there's 50 people in the room, how can I talk to all 50 people? When in reality, people have said this to me so many times. And I really know it to be true now. It's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And I used to hear that and be like, okay, like I get it, but it's It's so true. So I think with networking, yes, you should reach out to people that you want to be, right? Like people that you see like in positions that you see yourself being in the future, or people that you already see their bio. You're like, yeah, I really connect with this person. But I think it's about reaching out to those people, but knowing that even if you reach out, they may not respond automatically, right? And that's fine. Everyone is busy. But if you genuinely feel like you have a connection to someone, to not be afraid to reach out again, right? And so even if you have a list of 10 people that you really, really, really want to network with, like, I think that's a good start, right? And trying to reach out to them, and not necessarily, people are coming into DeVos that were not in careers that I cared about at all in sport. I'm still going to introduce myself and network. And if there's a commonality between us that I feel like is strong, I'm going to keep reaching out. But I think in networking is being strategic in a way that's still genuine about who you reach out to. So it's like, yeah, you want to grow your network to be big, but don't focus on how many people, it's how many genuine connections can you make. And I think sometimes you hit it off with people, sometimes you don't. The people that I hit it off with, it's easier to keep that connection going and to form that bond and contact. And I think it's also, in the sense that you said of not being annoying, like how do I not be annoying? I like to think of it as every professional has a busy work life, a busy personal life. If they don't respond, it's likely, you would hope, not because you're aggravating them or they're annoyed by you, but just by the simple fact that they're busy. So even reaching back out and not feeling skeptical about that or unsure about that, just to know, hey, like, I just want to reach out again and see if you have time. But I think an important thing of networking is knowing that. And so knowing when you call someone or set up a time to meet with someone that you know what you want to talk about. You're not just on the phone, like, yeah, so what did you do today? Knowing exactly what you wanted to say. But this is something that was really hard for me at first in DeVos because we had so many people coming in. I was like, oh, I got to connect with this person, this person, this person. And how often, like you said, should I reach out? But I think you talk to whoever is in the space for sure. You find a commonality, keep reaching out, keep getting to know them, follow up on holidays, birthdays. LinkedIn is like a great place for that because they get a promotion, comment on it, send them a message, or if they say something in a meeting that you remember, if they say, oh, I'm speaking at this event, wish them good luck when that event is coming up. Some things like that, just, I think those things come naturally when you have a genuine connection to someone. So I say just meet people, but try to do it genuinely and find those connection points so that it feels right. And you know when it feels right, and you know when there's a bond that's developing there.
Absolutely. So I heard a few things. So one, be intentional.
Yes.
And two, quality over quantity.
Yes.
Absolutely. So say, believe,
that was good.
You like that? You like that? I did too. I was sitting there. It was working. So say, believe, put in the chat. She said preach. So I would love to emphasize that because that definitely summed it up for us and just kind of made it short and concise. So it gives us something to work with in young professionals and just professionals in general on how to manage and maintain their network.
For sure.
All right. So you work on diversity and inclusion initiatives at Clemson for student athletes. So are there any initiatives that you're working on right now that you're excited about, or one in the past that you've kind of saw through to the end that you would like to talk to us about today?
Yeah, so when I interviewed for this position, I had a part of the interview that was with student athletes, and I think two of them were on our Tigers Unite leadership team. And so Tigers Unite is that umbrella group of student athlete groups we have a men's group, a women's group, an LGBTQ plus group, a multicultural students group, and an international students group. So 5 groups. And they're obviously made up of students who are either minorities or just a group of students that really wanted to get together and form connection that fit under this diversity and inclusion umbrella. So when I came in on my interview, I remember Tori Neiman, who's my boss, was like, is this something you want to work on? I know that you have done some of this work at Washington. I'm like, yes, like this is everything that I really love about this space and then some. So with Tigers Unite, this being me, last semester was my first semester. I'm in like month 5. It's really about building out what Tigers Unite looks like, especially moving forward. How do these 5 groups who are unique in their own thoughts, ideas, needs, and wants and desires, how do we bring those leaders together? But then how do we give resources and support to each of these groups? So we had a Pride event on Tuesday night. So our CU Pride group is our LGBTQ plus group. And for them, it was really important to build community and to have a space where people felt comfortable. That's not necessarily the point of our international students group. They still might want the same things, but they want a community of people who don't. This is their first time living in America, right? So I think for me, it's important to just support each of those groups and what exactly they need specifically. So, and give them outlets and give them resources so that we can do events like our CU Pride event on Tuesday. We have a Soul Food Sunday coming up February 6th for Black History Month. And if anyone knows me, I love food. And I love
me too. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
So that's important for me. And it's just for me, it's just important to have a space where people feel comfortable. And how can I best bring that out? And that's all diversity and inclusion is. I think people make D&I a lot harder than it should be, when it's really just about being a good person and showing up for people and showing people that they're supported. So that's a lot, but the whole Tigers Unite umbrella and supporting each of these student groups and what they want to do, that's a project, and bringing them together, that's a project that I really, really care about. And I'm really leaning in on when it comes to D&I for our students at Clemson this year.
Absolutely. And me being a current DeVos student and you being a former, I know that you will have no issue with bringing all of your ideas and ambitions to light and doing the things that student athletes today can absolutely benefit from. And I see that February 6th is a Sunday. So Maya, you trying to catch a flight?
Look, y'all, if y'all fly to Atlanta, I'll come pick you up and we'll be.
Oh, say less. Man, that's easy. Absolutely. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit. So Kayla and I, we have a lot of things in common, from loving food, first and foremost, to being volleyball athletes, to just being Black women working in the industry of sport. Now, Kayla also hosts a podcast, Start Her 5 podcast. So I kind of want to spend a little bit of time talking about the podcast that you now host. So please, everyone, go and follow the Start Her 5 Facebook page. And it's shown here up on the screen. So I like to reference an episode, Start Her episode, where you all talked about the 5 languages of workplace appreciation. Oftentimes we hear about the 5 love languages. We go back and forth, girlfriends, with other partners, and just talk about, what are our love languages. So I had never thought about a workplace love language. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I have to listen a little bit more. And so I want you to talk to us about and kind of sum it up for listeners on why it's so important to know your workplace love language and know how to communicate that to management and to coworkers.
Yeah, so this is super, super important. This is something that I don't think we've just talked about in that one episode, but we talked about a little bit in each episode, because Starter 5 is all about how do we support women, how do we illuminate experiences, how do we share the voices of women, especially Black women in sport, especially young Black women in sport, all these things. And a part of that, the work languages piece is how do you say what you need, right? And it's just like with the love languages, how do you tell your partner how you need to be loved? At work, it's like, how do I tell my boss? How do I tell my coworkers how I need to be supported? If I'm feeling down, if I'm happy about an event, if I'm nervous about an event. And something one of our co-stars or I don't know, one of our podcasts, one of the 5 of us, Grace, she brought it up and she said that she always has a really good experience at work with her supervisors, because she comes in and tells them exactly what she needs when she's working. And for her, it's feedback. And then we started talking about how millennials, I don't know if it's just millennials, but it feels like we just need a lot of feedback sometimes, right? And we were talking about, even as former athletes, I got feedback, whether it was good bad and
Bad.
different from my coach, right? So it's kind of hard to make that transition into the professional world because your boss isn't always going to give you feedback all the time about things, but it's how do you speak up for yourself? How do you tell people? How do you tell those who you work under and maybe who you work over what is needed for you? And so I thought that I'm so glad that you brought up that specific episode because since that episode, all of us have gotten a promotion or have transitioned into newer roles. And so I'm like listening back to it, like, oh my gosh, like I need to hear this right now because it's so true. But you know, how I think overall the idea is how do you share what you need to be successful? And then how do you ask people that might work under you those same questions? Because in order for a team to be successful, in order for you to be successful, your needs and wants have to be heard, and you shouldn't be afraid to share that. And everyone has to feel that way in order for your ultimate goal to be realized. And so I think that's just super important. And we didn't know at the time that this is actually a book and that we were like, oh yeah, Grace, you should write a book about this. And she was like, I will. And then we looked it up and it is actually a book about having the 5 languages in the workplace. So I don't know the title, but I know it's that simple to look up 5 love languages in the workplace. So I just encourage people to even do the love languages quiz on yourself and think about, does this apply in the workplace? Do I need words of affirmation? Do I need acts of service? Do I need quality time for me to show up as my best self or give my best and for student athlete development programs or anything like that? So I think that's super important, especially for women and Black women, because sometimes we find it hard to speak up for ourselves and we don't want to come off a certain way or have people question. I see someone said the angry Black woman, like that's the thing, like sometimes you stay quiet and then you feel like you have to pop for something in a moment and then you're like, oh, am I the angry Black woman now? But no, you're really just setting boundaries or saying what you need in that moment. So I think just establishing that and just being genuine and what you need up front is super, super, super important and has been even helpful for me in my role now at Clemson.
Absolutely. So they're dropping plenty of links in the chat right now. So the Facebook link to Start Her 5 podcast has dropped in the chat. Also, the book to the five love languages of the workplace has also dropped in the chat. So please, everyone, go and check those out. I'm coming up on my last question, and I would like for everyone to drop their questions in the chat. Maya King is going to lead our Q&A today. So please get all those great questions ready that you all have for Kayla. All right, Kayla. So we've pretty much, talked through everything, how you got your start. Undergrad, we've gone through graduate school, what you're doing, your role at Wyoming, and now you're at Clemson. So now I just want to talk about, now you're hosting the podcast among all your duties at work and any other outside things that you're doing in the community, as well as things that you're working on for yourself professionally as well as personally. So what I like to know is, what would you tell your younger self if there was 1 or 2 things that you could go back or that you could just whisper in your 15 to 18-year-old self's ear? What would you tell yourself?
So this is actually something I've been telling myself recently in general. So I would definitely tell my younger self this, but it would be that perfection is a lie. I actually have that written on a Post-it note on my vision board in my room, and I look at it a lot, a lot. Every time I go to my closet, I'm like, perfection is a lie. I think for me, it's especially being a Black woman, and I was raised in a neighborhood that was majority white. I think I just always felt this need, like you hear as the young Black kids in general, you have to be 10 times better, 2 times better. You have to work harder. You have to be smarter. You have to do everything and be on it. Especially going to Wyoming, I felt like I was a representation of all Black people in Wyoming because I was the only Black girl on my team for my first year. My second year, we brought in another Black girl, and I was kind of like a mentor to her. She was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I feel out of place here, but I just felt like I went through life, like feeling like, okay, I have to hold this model of perfection. And I think ultimately that's really detrimental, because then you can't be genuine, you can't be authentic. No one is perfect. And so I just think that like bound me up so much growing up in that 15-year-old self, right? 15 to 18, 15 to 28. I feel like it just really bound me up. And I would just tell my younger self, like, enjoy everything, enjoy the ups and the downs, enjoy the goods and the bads, because ultimately you're going to be led to a place where you're supposed to be. So striving so hard to be perfect isn't necessary. And people don't like perfection at the end of the day. They can claim that they want it, but people want to see your authentic self. They want to know what you're struggling with. And I think a lot of times your struggles can help people more than this idea of showing your perfect can. So that's what I would say. I would tell myself, that's what I'm telling myself right now. So that's
Still
definitely
telling
my
ourselves.
answer.
Absolutely. And I can agree with you, because I oftentimes, I don't know if I changed it on my home screen of my phone, but I would tell myself, give yourself grace. Because a lot of
Yes.
time, I could be very hard on myself, have very high expectations for myself.
Ooh.
But oftentimes I'm like, Candice, let's take a deep breath. Let's give ourselves grace. Like you said, like women in the industry, Black women specifically, we try to juggle, being raised by a single Black mom, she's juggling so much, and it was always go mode, go mode, go mode. So that's all I know about nature and by nurture. And so now, Candice, we're good. Give ourselves grace. We're good. Just roll the shoulders back. Go get something to eat, and we're gonna come back.
I feel you on that, because most of the time my mom can attest to this. I just needed some food when I was going through.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Kayla, for joining me in a great conversation.
Thank you.
And I would like to now throw it over to Maya for Q&A.
All right, thank you. And so thank you for all the wisdom you shared with us already. Like Candice said, DeVos is definitely a family. So we're excited that you were able to take time to connect with us. But we're also excited to see all the accomplishments that you reach as you continue in your career. So starting off with some questions from the chat, Iane asks, how do you deal with being told no when you want to implement a new program that you really believe will be useful to student athletes?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think it's just about asking questions like why no, and not feeling ashamed and not being abrasive about that, obviously, either, and not saying why. Well, why can't we do this? But I think it's just asking the questions, why don't other people think it should be done? Because there could be valid reasons behind that. But I think it's also coming up with points about why it should be done, and concrete points. Well, I know that 10 volleyball players have felt like they've needed this, so I think that this program is needed. Or I've done research into what other programs are doing in our conference or across the NCAA, and I think that this would be beneficial. I think a lot that goes into student athlete development is research in a way too. What is supporting this for whether it's leadership? We have a Tiger Leadership Academy here. So what are things that are scientifically supported when it comes to leadership development, right? And being able to back that up as well. So I think just asking questions and realizing that sometimes no might be just no for now, or no for the programs that we already have going on. There could be a multitude of reasons no is the answer. So I think just figuring that out and then changing what you have, pressing the issue a little bit more if you feel really strongly about it, or just moving on in a different direction.
Definitely not canceling anything, but figuring out the best way that it can work for you and your student athletes.
Exactly.
So the next few questions come from Courtney Moore. The first one is, how have you taken the challenges and lessons you've learned as a student athlete and applied it to your professional career?
I think athletics has just prepared me for life. I think I brought this up earlier, but your coaches are constantly telling you what you're doing right or what you're doing wrong. And that's how life is. People are going to tell you what you're doing right or what you're doing wrong. Or I think athletics and being an athlete in general teaches you how to fail and keep going. Like if I hit a ball in the net, which I obviously did multiple times throughout my career, it's like, how do I erase that and move on to the next ball? And even now thinking about it, like a lot of times I would tell this to the girls that I coach too, like if you hit the ball in the net, tell the setter you want the next ball. And I feel like sometimes you just have to approach life like that. Like, okay, I got blocked or I hit the ball in the net. Like, no, I'm going to ask for this again or ask for another challenge again and just attack it. No pun intended. But I think that athletics has just set me up, or being an athlete has just set me up for my career in that sense of just to keep going. And especially in student athlete development, we do a lot of programs. We're up really late sometimes, we're here really late sometimes. And it's that like fire and energy to get to that end goal. And I think that's life in general. I feel like I have a lot of goals that I want to accomplish professionally and personally. And at the end of the day, I always have to remind myself, why is it that I want to accomplish those goals, or what does that goal mean to me? And I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it happen. And if I realize along the way it shouldn't happen, that's fine, then I'll move on. But I just think being an athlete, especially at the D1 level, prepared me for that a lot, because you're going to fail and things aren't going to go your way, and you're going to be tired. You're going to have to work with people that you don't like sometimes, and you're not going to understand your coaches, just like you won't understand your boss at times, and all that's fine. But at the end of the day, what's the ultimate goal that you have for yourself, and how do you still achieve it?
Definitely a big lesson that still working on, especially as a student. So feel all of those things. So the next question, also from Courtney Moore, is what are your thoughts on therapy? Do you feel like it helps? And what would your experiences within therapy? I guess, what were your experiences in therapy?
Yeah, I think therapy is super important. I'll be authentic and say I had therapy this morning because I have it once a week. I think I just think it's important. I don't think that it has to be for, therapy doesn't look the same for everyone. It might not necessarily be going to a therapist once a week. It might be writing in a journal. Like I said, that's therapy for me. It might be reading the Bible. That's therapy for me. Talking to your friends, that's also therapy. Talking to Sable Lee, who was my mentor, and DeVos, and my best friend. That's therapy for me. We have therapy sessions, and even the podcast is therapy for me. So I think overall, the discipline and the practice of going to therapy is insanely beneficial, because I feel like sometimes we get caught up in our minds and caught up in our pain, our hurt, or not understanding certain situations. And sometimes it's as easy as tricking your brain into something else. And a lot of times we need those tools. We don't naturally have them, or we haven't been told about tools to better your mental space or your mental situation at the moment. And so I find that very therapy. I find that very helpful. And I even think it helps with work, right? Because you're taking off stress of personal issues, and now you're able to focus on work more, focus on your goals more. So I love it. And like I said, I'll be authentic. I go once a week. So I need it.
So speaking of Sable, our next question comes from Sable Lee in the chat. She asks, of all the things you've done professionally, what are you most proud of yourself for?
Of course, Sable would come with such a great question. I would say at Washington, one of the things I'm most proud of, and I think it's just helping me have confidence in my position now at Clemson. I necessarily wasn't supposed to be in charge of student groups, but some of the Black student athletes were like, we're going in a different direction with our BSAA, Black Student Athlete Alliance, and we want Kayla to help us. Like, we want her to be our mentor or whatever it might have it, or supervisor. And with that, I feel really proud professionally of being able to advocate for them. This switch happened at a time in 2020, early 2020, when all the unrest was going on in our country, to put that lightly. And I think a lot of people were pulling the Black student athletes like, well, what are your thoughts? What should we do? What do you think about the situation? How can you educate the other students? And that's not what they wanted. And I feel very comfortable going to senior administrators saying, they're not going to talk to this team about this, or they're not going to do this because that's not what they want. And in that, we started a mentorship program. So we connected the Black student athletes who are in BSAA with mentors in the Seattle community or alums who are also Black. And that gave me so much pride because I felt it was something that was needed and necessary for them, something that they wanted. But I just think that a lot of times being a Black person, a Black young professional, Black student, a Black student athlete, you just need people in spaces that you haven't seen to get to where you're going. And so it just meant a lot to me to that, not to be my position, but feeling the confidence to do it. And I feel like it just has given me confidence even now to think of how can we implement that at Clemson, or what else can we do, and just knowing that it can be done.
Yeah, I'm sure that was definitely appreciated, because that is something that I appreciate in seeing people like you or other people that we see invisible women in places that we aspire to be in, but we need to see someone there first to gain more confidence to work to get there.
Yeah, definitely.
So to combine our last two questions from our chat, oh no, we have another one. So I'll combine these two last questions in the chat. So you talked about establishing those boundaries and saying what you need as a Black woman in the industry. At what point did you start doing that without feeling guilty or worrying about how someone is going to take what you say? But also, what is your position on bringing your full self to work as a Black woman in business?
That's such a good question. I think I'm still learning. Like, I still feel pretty young in my professional career, but for me, I think creating boundaries, I think showing up as your authentic self is just important, because it is, to not show up as your authentic self makes you feel so weighed down. And I don't think you do your best work. And maybe for me, in my experiences at Wyoming, I was the only Black student athlete on the volleyball team. And it took until everything happened with all the social injustice and everything that went on in 2020 for me to be like, you know what? No, I'm not going to hide myself. If I want to say this sentence that I always say when I'm back home with my friends, or if I want to eat this, or if I want to do that, if I want to speak my mind, I feel like I close that off from professional settings or athletic settings for so long that I just realized I'm not going to do that. That was very personal for me, right? Like, it took until I was 25 to be able to do that. And so I think I come to work like that too. I'm not going to hide things that I do. I have a podcast. I talk to my coworkers about that, or a blog. I talk to my coworkers about that. So I think it's just knowing that showing up authentically is you putting your best foot forward. Someone can not take it well, but honestly, that's on them. I don't think you should be a mean-spirited person, but I think you're doing yourself a disservice and you're doing your work a disservice if you're not showing up as yourself each and every day, because I feel like I can show up as myself. So I feel like I can really put the energy into creating these programs or asking my coworkers for help that I don't think I would be able to do if I was hiding a piece of myself. But I also think as a professional, I would look to create that space for others, whether it's interns or student athletes that come in. I want you to feel comfortable, because I know that's how you show up as your best self. And I think in this space too, it's hard to set boundaries, but if you say, I'm not going to respond to this email after a certain time, you got to stick with it. And I think that's hard. I think I'm still learning that, because I want to give so much, but if you don't take care of yourself, if you are pouring from a cup that's half empty, you're never going to give your best self. And essentially your goals aren't going to look the same. You're not going to be able to reach them in the same way.
Yeah, that is very true. So our last question from the chat is from Dorian Dickey, who says, hello, Kayla. Ever since you've been part of the Start Her 5 podcast, what have you acknowledged most about yourself?
Oh my gosh. I think that's such a good question, Dorian. That's a really good question, Dorian. I think I've just realized that if you put your mind to something, like, you can do it. You are stopping you. And this is something that actually Crystal Peterson, another DeVos alum who's also on the podcast, brought up in our last episode. That's a shameless plug. But a lot of times we stop ourselves from doing things that we want to do because we're afraid of what people will say. And then creating this podcast is so scary to put out something that you work on that you don't know how people will take it. Will they listen to an episode and be like, this is terrible? Or they look at a graphic and be like, what is this? But that's just, there's so much that stands in the way of you obtaining your goals, but just the sole fact of knowing that we created this idea of a podcast and we encourage each other in every episode. Like now I just feel that confidence that if I want to reach this level in my professional career, if I want to check this goal off or check this, anything off of my list, anything that I want to do, like I can do it. And I feel like I've, in the past year, especially with our podcast, and we worked on it for a while before we actually put it out into the world. That's why I learned people are going to support you. People aren't going to support you. And that's completely fine. But doing what feels good to you and genuine to you and you going after your goals is very empowering. And there's literally nothing that you can't do or obtain. So I think I'm learning all of that, and just to not be fearful of putting myself out there because someone needs it. Someone needs what you have to offer.
And we all definitely want to support you. So don't forget to check out the podcast episodes. And then our last question, which comes from Facebook. How can your role and experience in athletics be impactful to young women who attend to work outside of athletics?
Oh, can you say that one more time? That's a good question.
So how can your role and experience in athletics be impactful to young women who attend to work outside of athletics?
I think it can be impactful because I think that and hopefully this answers the question. I think that every job is essentially the same, and the work that you put in, the drive that you put in to reach your goals can be shared with anyone, right? And can help anyone in any position that they go into. So if I was to talk to a female, a young woman, a young Black woman, I would say, look, I learned how to advocate for myself. I learned how to pay attention to detail, how to communicate, how to work with other people, how to listen, how to continuously go out and learn. I think that's a really big thing for me, is how can I listen to different podcasts or watch different interviews, do whatever it takes to learn what I feel like I need to learn to be the best that I can be. And I feel like sports has shaped me to feel that way. Working in athletics has shaped me to feel that way because we're supporting 500 student athletes, or almost 500 student athletes on the daily, and their dreams, their wants, their desires, while working with people around us. So I feel like I would take all that, and I don't know what I just said, but I would take all that, just the experiences, the need to work hard, the need, again, to pay attention to detail. I think that can be applied anywhere. And I think just continuously learning, I think is the biggest point. I think if you want, my dad used to say this because his mom used to say it, no matter what you want to do, if you wanted to own a gas station, be the best gas station in your city, right? Just be the best at anything that you do and ask questions and continue to learn along the way.
Yeah, it definitely applies to any career path or anything that you do in life in general. Like, that's just give 100% in anything that you do. So
exactly.
That's all with my questions. I'll send it back over to Candice.
Thanks so much, Maya. That was actually really great, Kayla. So I don't know if like Garnett had something up his sleeve when he selected you to be my first guest, but there's so many parallels and it's insane. So what age do you coach?
So I haven't started coaching in Clemson yet because this is another lesson that I've learned is don't bite off more than you can chew. Just take it easy, work into it. But last year I coached 14-year-olds. And usually I would coach anywhere between like 16 and 17, but I think 14 and 15 is my sweet spot.
Okay, because I have 15s right now, and the voice is, yeah.
I think coaching teaches you a lot too about being a leader, because I would realize I would tell them to do something like
literal. They took it so
small. And then if none of them did it, if one person didn't do it, I'm like, if one person didn't do it, I'm like, she's not listening. If everyone didn't do it, I'm like, clearly I need to communicate better. And so
you have to figure out different ways to how to reword it, communicate it.
Exactly.
Okay, well, let me get a demonstration going. Let me just show you.
How about y'all get with water and I'm gonna rethink this.
Yeah, cheer it up, get a drink. I gotta think this through. Absolutely. But
Exactly.
thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule and joining us today
Thank
on Invisible
you.
Women in Sport. And now we're going to work to close out the show.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Special thanks to all. So feel free to follow us at Institute SSJ on all platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And tune in on February 10th for episode 2 of season 3 of Invisible Women in Sport, where I will have a conversation with Keisha Dunlap. Be sure to be on the lookout for the registration link. We thank you all for your support of Invisible Women in Sport. We are a nonprofit organization with other programs that impact various social justice issues. Please use the QR code shown up on the screen to support us with a financial gift as we continue to change lives through the power of sport. Thank you. So special shout out to Kayla Henderson for joining us today. Producer Garnett L. Overby III, Senior Advisor Consultant Matt Adelson, Graduate Assistants Maya King and Iyane Miranda. And a special thank you to everyone that has continued to support us on Invisible Women in Sport. Please follow us on all social media platforms to stay up to date and informed on future programs of at Institute SSJ. If you ever miss an episode, we've got you covered on our YouTube. We have all of our episodes posted and up to date there. Also, we get a lot of inquiries about internship opportunities. If any of our supporters or members have internships available, please send your information to our producer, Garnett Overby at goverby@sportandsocialjustice.org, so we can send it out to the people reaching out to us. And I like to say that has definitely impacted me personally, because we featured Miss Venetia Bowler of Special Olympics International, and she sent over internship opportunity to Garnett. He pushed it out to us, and now I am the competition management intern with Special Olympics International. So it works. We use those things. So please, please, please take advantage as we can better assist our women coming up in the industry of sport. And don't forget to tune in February 10th for episode 2, season 3 of Invisible Women in Sport, where I will sit down with Keisha Dunlap. Be sure to register. And once again, I'm your host for Invisible Women in Sport Zoomcast. See us now. Thanks, guys. Thank you all for joining us.